lecture, we have seen that how the development of the classification system took place and how the bacterial system of classification came into existence. After the phenetic type of classification system, which was totally based on the morphological attributes, on the biochemical attributes and on the physiological attributes, we started developing a new type of classification system. Now, the first question that comes into our mind is, why do we need a classification system? What is the necessity of a classification system when a classification system has already been there? Now, let us take a very common example. In the case of Campylobacter and Helicobacter, which are now known as two separate genus, was not known during the early approaches of the classification system. During that time, when the morphological, the biochemical and physiological attributes were considered, they kept Helicobacter into a common group of Campylobacter. Why it happened? Because we didn't have the modern approaches to differentiate Helicobacter from the Campylobacter. So, this was the limitation of the phenetic type of classification system which was developed due to the early approaches. And that is why we need to have a system where we could classify the microorganisms which could give a phylogenetic relationship. So, today what we are going to learn is the modern approaches to the classification system. Now, there was one aim in mind of the scientists, and that is why they were approaching towards a new classification system, and that one aim they had was to reconstruct the phylogeny. Now, what is phylogeny? When I talk about phylogeny, I can divide the word phylogeny into two halves. One is philo and the other is geny. Philo means a tribe and geny means production. Therefore, when I say phylogeny, we are going to construct a system where I could have an evolutionary pattern, a pattern of development of the microbial system. And therefore, this led to the new classification system which is known as phylogenetic classification system. Now, after Whittaker's 5-kingdom concept, we know that in 1990, Carl Woese gave the domain concept. During this domain concept, Carl Woese said that after phylum, the kingdom taxon should not be there. It should be completely eliminated because the kingdom concept is not grouping or classifying the bacteria into proper groups. So, what he said is we should have domains, and the domains will be placed at a higher level than the phylum, than the kingdom, and therefore, the kingdom concept was totally eliminated and the life form was divided into 3 different domains as bacteria, archaea and eukarya. We will be focusing mainly on the domain of bacteria. So, let us see what was the hierarchical system that was developed by Carl Woese after he gave the concept of domain. So, if I consider the domain bacteria, under this domain I take one of the phylum which is Proteobacteria. Now, this is one of the phylum, mind it, there are numerous phylum under this domain. So, if the phylum Proteobacteria is taken, this Proteobacteria is subdivided into numerous classes. They can be alpha Proteobacteria, beta Proteobacteria, gamma Proteobacteria. Like this, we have numerous type of classes. Now, if I take an example of gamma Proteobacteria, it has got numerous orders. And if one of the orders is Enterobacteriales, under this I have got families, which is Enterobacteriaceae in this case. Now, this family is further divided into numerous genus. That is, we say numerous members together make up a family, and these members are called the genus. The genus is further subdivided into species. So, what are these modern approaches? Let us study in detail. First approach we are going to learn is the serological test. When I talk about serological test, a very common word that comes into our mind is serum. Yes. Whenever the blood of a person is infected with the microorganism, the plasma produces antibodies against that microorganism. So if I take out the plasma, it has got the antibodies against that particular microorganism, and if in a culture plate I take that plasma which is having the antibodies and allow it to clot with an unknown bacteria, and if the clotting takes place, that means the bacteria can be identified. So this is a very simple method which is called a serological test, and this is practiced till now also in the pathological lab in order to identify the different strains of pathogens. So what are the advantages of the serological test? Let us see. It is highly specific. That means the antibodies which are produced are very much specific for that particular microorganism, and therefore we are able to identify that microorganism by serological test. Number 2, it does not usually require the organism to be isolated into pure culture. Suppose you are isolating a specimen which is having numerous type of microbes, and you allow it to clot along with the plasma which is having the antibodies, and the clotting takes place. That means the microorganism is present in that particular specimen. So you need not to prepare the pure culture. You can just work out and identify the bacteria which is present in a mixed population. The third advantage of serological test is it can be used to identify the organism that can't be grown on the media. We call those type of bacteria as non-culturable bacteria. There are many bacteria in the environment which we cannot culture. That means which we cannot cultivate, and it becomes very difficult for us to identify those type of bacteria. But if we go on for the serological test, we are able to identify the non-culturable bacteria as well, and therefore this is one of the important benefits of the serological test. The second modern approach that we are going to learn is the GC ratio. G stands for guanine and C stands for cytosine. We all know that DNA has got 4 bases: guanine, cytosine, adenine and thymine. Guanine always have got a complementary base with cytosine, and adenine has got a complementary base with thymine. Between guanine and cytosine there is formation of a triple bond, and between adenine and thymine there is formation of a double bond. So now we can say that if we wish to break the guanine and cytosine which is having triple bond, it is much harder to break it because they are having triple bond in contrast to the double bond which is present between A and T. And therefore, this GC ratio, that means the amount of guanine and cytosine that is present, is very important in order to identify a microorganism. Now, how do we calculate it? We say that amount of guanine and cytosine that is present out of all the 4 bases, that is guanine, cytosine, adenine and thymine. If we calculate the guanine and cytosine ratio, it gives a sort of indication towards the identification of the bacteria. Now, if the sample, here the sample refers to the bacteria. If the sample shows 10 to 20% difference, it should be assigned to the same genus. And if the difference is 5% or less than 5%, then it should be in the same species. Another approach is the Tm value. Tm is the melting temperature of DNA. Now, we all know that DNA is double-stranded. Therefore, when we want to melt the DNA, what we do is we need to give a high temperature. So, if I give a high temperature to a DNA molecule, the 2 duplex strands of the DNA which are there, they separate off and we get a single-stranded DNA. So, how do we know that yes, the strands have become single-stranded? This is by measuring the relative absorbance at 260 nanometer, which is a UV range. With the help of a UV spectrometer, if I take on the absorbance of a solution where I have got the DNA, I can measure whether the DNA has melted or not. So here we see that I have got 2 coordinates. In the x-axis, I am writing the temperatures, and on the y-axis I am putting down the relative absorbance at 260 nanometer. So we can see that as the temperature increases, the DNA starts melting. That means the two strands now become single stranded, and therefore what happens? The absorbance in the solution increases. When the absorbance in the solution increases, that means the graph rises like this. As the temperature keeps on increasing, the DNA melts, and when we see that all the DNA has melted, and after that we get a saturation point. That means showing that all the DNA which were double stranded have become single stranded. Now Tm value is the midpoint of this sharp peak. That is the melting temperature of the DNA, which shows that the DNA melt at this particular temperature, which is known as the Tm value of the DNA. Now this Tm value of the DNA is very much related to the GC ratio that we have seen in the earlier approaches. How? G and C, I told you guanine and cytosine, they have the formation of triple bond. Therefore, the DNA which is having high amount of GC content or GC ratio will have a high melting temperature of the DNA, because the breaking of the triple bond takes much higher temperature in comparison to the double bond which is present in A and T. Therefore, we say that higher is the GC content, higher is the Tm value of that particular DNA. Let us see a few examples of the bacteria. Here we see in the x-axis I have got the Tm value of the bacteria, and on the y-axis I have got the GC content of the same bacteria. So the first bacteria written over here is Cytophaga. Now this bacteria, we can see it has got a GC content and the Tm value is a little more than 80 degrees Celsius. In comparison to the one which is Mycobacterium feli, which has got a high GC content, and in the meantime or in addition to it, it has got a high Tm value. Another attribute or another approach that was taken in order to classify the bacteria in order to develop a new classification system is the nucleic acid hybridization. Now this nucleic acid hybridization basically means that we take out the nucleic acid from one of the organism, we take out the nucleic acid from another organism, let the two nucleic acids mix in a solution. If they hybridize together, that means they are very similar or they are related. Now this relatedness depends upon the percentage of hybridizations. Now one of the DNA coming off from one of the organisms should be labeled, and that is, we label the DNA with the radioactive isotopes of P32, H3 or C14. So these are the radioactive isotopes of carbon, hydrogen and phosphorus by which we can label one of the DNA, and if this hybridization takes place, we measure the radioactivity and get to know that yes, the hybridization has taken place, so the bacteria may be related or they may not be related. Now if the two strains show at least 70% relatedness under optimal hybridization conditions and less than 5% difference in their Tm value, then they are considered to be the members of the same species. So we see that how the modern approaches is going on is they are relating each and every attribute to the one which has already been discovered. Tm related to GC, nucleic acid hybridization related to Tm. So this is how we say that the modern approaches is going on for the classification system. Now how do we do this nucleic acid hybridization? Let us see. During this hybridization process, we take out a DNA from one of the organism which is not labeled. We call it unlabeled DNA. When this unlabeled DNA is subjected to restriction endonucleases, which are nothing but the enzymes which cut the DNA fragment into, which cut the whole DNA into smaller fragments. Now they are exposed to gel electrophoresis. This unlabeled DNA is exposed to gel electrophoresis in these two lanes, you can see, along with one of the marker. Marker shows the fragments of the DNA where we know the size of the fragments of the DNA, and therefore this is called marker. Now after this gel has been run, what happens is a nitrocellulose membrane or a nitrocellulose filter paper is pressed onto the gel. This is done in order to get the impression of the DNA which is there in the gel. So on the nitrocellulose paper, which is on above the nitrocellulose paper, we give some sort of weight, and then a stack of paper is being given, and after some time we call it a blotting process. That is, the DNA fragments which were present on the gel now gets absorbed onto the surface of the nitrocellulose membrane. And now we take out the nitrocellulose membrane which is having the unlabeled DNA fragments along with the marker which was there onto the gel. Now this nitrocellulose membrane is being taken out. This is packed in a plastic bag, and inside the plastic bag we have labeled DNA probe. That means in the plastic bag we have given the DNA which is radioactively labeled, and once it is radioactively labeled, that means we know the particular type of DNA that is present over there. It is allowed to incubate for some time. After some time, we go on for the radioactive counting, and we find that there are certain fragments which show radioactivity. What does that mean? It means that the DNA radioactive probe has hybridized with the unlabeled DNA, and therefore we get such bands. This is known as the nucleic acid hybridization. Now this nucleic acid hybridization can be between two DNA molecules. This can be between two RNA molecules, or this can be between DNA and RNA molecule. So in DNA fingerprinting, what is done is the genome or the DNA of a particular microorganism is subjected to restriction endonuclease, which cuts the DNA into smaller pieces. Now these smaller pieces are exposed to PCR, that is polymerase chain reaction, by which we can amplify the smaller fragments of the DNA. Therefore, we have numerous fragments coming up from one of the organism, and we have numerous fragments of DNA which is coming up from another microorganism. So what happens is, when this pattern of DNA is followed with another pattern which is coming up from another organism, and they are matched together, if we find that the DNA fragments which are coming at different parts of the gel come out to be somewhat same, or they are related, then it shows that they may be related, and therefore these are called the DNA fingerprints. Now this process by which this is done is called the restriction fragment length polymorphism. Now there is another process which we call rep-PCR technique. In rep-PCR technique, the word rep here means to repetitive sequences. That means in rep-PCR, we use restriction endonucleases for the repetitive sequences of the that are present in the DNA. While in the case of RFLP, which is restriction fragment length polymorphism, we use endonucleases which do the DNA at any of the sites. Now going on to another approach which is called the nucleic acid sequences. Now when I say nucleic acid sequencing, basically what the scientists do is, it is very cumbersome to sequence the whole DNA. Therefore they went in for sequencing of the RNA, or specially we call it rRNA, that is the RNA which is associated with the ribosomes. They are essential to critical organelle found in all microorganisms. Critical organelle here is ribosome. The ribosomal RNA are associated with the ribosomes, and we know that ribosomes are the important components for the protein synthesis. That means they are very essential for each and every microorganism, and therefore the rRNA analysis is very important, or it may solve the problem of classification. Second is, their functional role is same in all ribosomes. So rRNA, wherever you find rRNA, the functional role of this rRNA remains the same. Their structure changes very slowly. This was one of the very important criteria, because we see that DNA may undergo mutation and therefore changes its sequences or changes its structure. While in the case of rRNA especially, they are very much conserved. They undergo the process of changing at a very slow pace, and therefore they are very important to study in order to know the phylogeny. The rRNA contains variable and stable sequences. So in addition to the variable sequences, the rRNA do have stable sequences which do not normally undergo or which do not normally change. Both closely related and very distantly related microorganisms can be compared with the help of rRNA, which cannot be done with the help of DNA. And the last thing is, this was an important advantage as distantly related organisms can be studied only using sequences that can change little with time. So as the time goes on, we normally find the DNA also changes, but the rRNA does not change with time so rapidly. And therefore, rRNA sequence became very important in order to know the ancestor, in order to identify the particular type of bacteria. Now the question comes again to the scientist, which rRNA? Because there is 16S rRNA, there is 5S rRNA, there is 23S rRNA. So which rRNA has to be studied? They have to be very specific. Now they went on to study the 16S rRNA. Now why 16S? Because 16S rRNA is moderately of size which can be easily tackled by the scientist, by the molecular biologist. And secondly, or the most important thing is, 16S rRNA is very conserved. Now specific regions of DNA that has proved to be the most informative for evolutionary relatedness is now considered to be 16S rRNA, not the other rRNA which are present in the microorganism. The gene that controls the RNA component of the smaller subunit of the bacterial ribosome. Now, what happened after this? We have numerous modern approaches, and we see that these approaches are very much linked to one another. So ultimately, we develop a new type of classification system replacing the old classification system, which was phenetic classification system. And the new type of classification now we have in our hand today is the phylogenetic classification system of bacteria. That means a classification system where we can reconstruct the phylogeny, we can show the ancestors of the bacteria, we can show the relatedness among different species of the bacteria. And therefore, we had the development of phylogenetic classification system. So when we have phylogenetic classification system, and if we study the domain of bacteria, there are about 80 lineages. It is not possible for me to show you all the 80 lineages over here, but the prominent 17 lineages have been shown over here in this slide, and these lineages are only possible because now we could sequence the 16S rRNA, that is 16S ribosomal rRNA. So accordingly, we say that bacteria based on 16S ribosomal rRNA sequence can be compared, and they form a tree which is called the phylogeny tree. That means the bacteria which is present over here and the bacteria which is present over here shows that they are distantly related, but they are related because a common branch is there between. So in this way, we can have green sulfur bacteria and green non-sulfur bacteria, but they are not so related. Not so much so related because they are quite far off. On the other hand, we have got proteobacteria where many gram-negative bacteria are also there. So this is the phylogenetic type of classification system of the domain bacteria. After that, we had the polyphasic taxonomy. Now what is polyphasic? Poly means multiple, phasic means different phases or different attributes. So polyphasic basically refers to what is the classification of the phylogenetic classification refers to is we are considering numerous approaches, and these approaches should be considered at one time only. Don't take the morphology as the priority. Don't take the DC content as a priority. Don't take the nucleic acid sequencing as the only priority. You should take all the approaches together, but the hereditary material should be given a much higher weightage in comparison to the morphological character, which was not present in the case of numerical taxonomy. And therefore, we had the development of the polyphasic taxonomic methods. In polyphasic taxonomic methods, some important criteria were given. What are these? This says that serological techniques can be used to identify strains but not genera or species. So they are very specific. They can identify a particular type of strain, but they cannot identify a wider group like a species or a genera. The protein electrophoretic patterns, that means the DNA fingerprinting pattern, the DNA hybridization pattern, such techniques are useful in determining the species but not the genera and the family. Therefore, the hybridization technique, the DNA fingerprinting technique cannot determine the families but can determine the species. On the other hand, there is DNA hybridization, and the analysis of the G+C content can be used in studying species and genera. The characteristics such as the chemical composition, the DNA probe results, the rRNA sequencing, the DNA sequences, they can be used together, and when they are used together, we are able to characterize a species, a genera, and also a family. So what is the outcome of all these modern approaches? In our earlier lecture, we were talking about the first edition of the Burgess Manual of Systematic Classification. During that time, or during the first edition publication, we know that Burgess classified the whole bacterial world, or we can say the whole microbial world, into 4 different divisions. But now came the second edition of Burgess Manual of Systematic Bacteriology after the modern approaches were considered. Volume 1 takes into account the archaebacteria or the archaea and the deep branching and phototrophic bacteria. It also includes many gram-negative bacteria. In volume 2, we have the proteobacteria, a very large group of bacteria which is again having many gram-negative bacteria. In volume 3, we consider all the gram-positive bacteria which is having a low GC content. That means low GC content, low TM value, and accordingly they are classified. In volume 4, we have again gram-positive bacteria, but they have got a high GC content, that means high melting temperature of the DNA. And in volume 5, we are going to have the planktomycetes and spirochetes. That means this is a modern system of classification which is given in the second edition of the Burgess Manual of the Systematic Bacteriology. So, today if I come across a bacteria, if I discover a bacteria and I wish to know whether this bacteria is a new one or it has already been exploited, already been known, then what I have to do is, I have to do the morphological, the biochemical and the 16S rRNA sequencing along with the hybridization and the DNA fingerprinting method, and I refer all those characters to the volume, to any of the volume, because once I had the characters, I know which volume I had to refer to, and I get all the characters, match it up with the bacteria which I have isolated. If all the characters match up, that means the bacteria has already been discovered, and if the characters do not match up and the 16S rRNA sequence comes out to be a new one, that means I have discovered a new bacteria. So these are the modern approaches by which I can identify a bacteria, I can name a bacteria, and I can classify a bacteria to a particular group, that means to a particular genus, to a particular species.